Avoiding complexity reduces bugs. Nobody actually creates perfect code the first time around, except me. But there's only one of me. Bad programmers worry about the code. Good programmers worry about data structures and their relationships. Talk is cheap. Show me the code. Those that can, do. Those that can't, complain. Most good programmers do programming not because they expect to get paid or get adulation by the public, but because it is. All operating systems suck, but Linux just sucks less. A computer is like air conditioning, it becomes useless when you open Windows. Don't hurry your code. Make sure it works well and is well designed. Don't worry about timing. If you think your users are idiots, only idiots will use it. In real open source, you have the right to control your own destiny. Intelligence is the ability to avoid doing work, yet getting the work done. I have an ego the size of a small planet. I like offending people, because I think people who get offended should be offended. Backups are for wimps. Real men upload their data to an FTP site and have everyone else mirror it. Excusing bad programming is a shooting offense, no matter what the circumstances. In personal conversations with technical people, I call myself a hacker. But when I'm talking to journalists I just say programmer or something like that. People who are doing things for fun do things the right way by themselves. My name is Linus, and I am your God. Theory and practice sometimes clash. And when that happens, theory loses. Every single time. An infinite number of monkeys typing into GNU Emacs would never make a good program. I started Linux as a desktop operating system. And it's the only area where Linux hasn't completely taken over. That just annoys the hell out of me. I don't think I'm unusual in preferring my laptop to be thin and light. In my opinion, MS is a lot better at making money than it is at making good operating systems. There are lots of Linux users who don't care how the kernel works, but only want to use it. That is a tribute to how good Linux is. An individual developer like me cares about writing the new code and making it as interesting and efficient as possible. But very few people want to do the testing. Every time I see some piece of medical research saying that caffeine is good for you, I high-five myself. Because I'm going to live forever. Given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. See, you not only have to be a good coder to create a system like Linux, you have to be a sneaky bastard too. I think of myself as an engineer, not as a visionary or big thinker. I don't have any lofty goals. Non-technical questions sometimes don't have an answer at all. I think, fundamentally, open source does tend to be more stable software. It's the right way to do things. Developers have the attention spans of slightly moronic woodland creatures. You won't get sued for anti-competitive behavior. If Microsoft ever does applications for Linux, it means I've won. I want my office to be quiet. The loudest thing in the room, by far, should be the occasional purring of the cat. I try to avoid long-range plans and visions, that way I can more easily deal with anything new that comes up. The thing with Linux is that the developers themselves are actually customers too. That has always been an important part of Linux. The memory management on the Power PC can be used to frighten small children. The way to do good basic design isn't actually to be really smart about it, but to try to have a few basic concepts. I'm interested in Linux because of the technology, and Linux wasn't started as any kind of rebellion against the evil Microsoft empire. In many cases, the user interface to a program is the most important part for a commercial company. Whether the program works correctly or not seems to be secondary. When you say I wrote a program that crashed Windows, people just stare at you blankly and say, hey, I got those with the system, for free. On the internet nobody can hear you being subtle. Once you realize that documentation should be laughed at, peed upon, put on fire, and just ridiculed in general, then, and only then, have you reached the level where you can safely read it and try to use it to actually implement a driver. In open source, we feel strongly that to really do something well, you have to get a lot of people involved. I am not out to destroy Microsoft. That would be a completely unintended side effect. I think the term intellectual property should be avoided, not because it's a bad term, but because it mixes things up that shouldn't be mixed up. There are different forms, and they hardly have anything to do with each other. I don't actually go to that many conferences. I do that a couple of times a year. Normally, I am not recognized, people don't throw their panties at me. I'm a perfectly normal person sitting in my den just doing my job. Portability is for people who cannot write new programs. I am pragmatic. That which works, works, and theory can go screw itself. However, my pragmatism also extends to maintainability, which is why I also want it done well. So I've decided to be a very rich and famous person who doesn't really care about money, and who is very humble but who still makes a lot of money and is very famous, but is very humble and rich and famous. Fairly cheap home computing was what changed my life. Only religious fanatics and totalitarian states equate morality with legality. I actually think that I'm a rather optimistic and happy person, it's just that I'm not a very positive person, if you see the difference. I very seldom worry about other systems. I concentrate pretty fully on just making Linux the best I can. With software, you really can replicate and do a lot of very real and active development in parallel, and actually try it out and see what works. Linux has definitely made a lot of sense even in a purely materialistic sense. I'm a technical manager, but I don't have to take care of people. I only have to worry about technology itself. If you think penguins are fat and waddle, you have never been attacked by one running at you in excess of 100 miles per hour.